Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our exclusive 90-minute blockchain workshop. If I haven't yet introduced myself, my name is Bruce Hughes. I work closely with a platform and a foundation that has embedded itself in blockchain technologies. And really what I'm hoping to do today is take something that can seem quite complicated and make it simple. So maybe before I start, can I encourage you to go into the Q&A and let me know if you are already involved in cryptocurrencies or blockchain and for how long. And if you're not, just type the number 0. In other words, you're here to learn, you're here to find out what next steps you can maybe take, or you're just here to get more information. I'd love to know who I'm speaking to. So if you can just light up the Q&A box, that'll be great. Okay, we've got quite a nice mix. We have some people who've only just recently started playing around with cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and then we have many new people on the call as well. So let's break it down. I'm going to break this into 3 sections. 30 minutes is going to be spent on education. It might be overwhelming because you might hear some new words, you might hear some new analogies, but what I'm hoping to do is really simplify what it is. The good news is the first 30 minutes gives you a foundation of understanding before we go into the next 30 minutes, which is how to use products, services to simplify the world of cryptocurrencies, how to automate or accelerate or accumulate your portfolio without any form of overwhelm. And then the last 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can take your knowledge and these simple products and services and how you can also potentially build a business model around it in order to increase cash flow. So those are the 3 sections. I want to give you as much value as possible. So let's dive straight into it. Now to kick us off, I do want to say I use a lot of websites when we look at certain information or we look at certain data, because I'm really wanting to empower you to be able to go away and look at the information for yourself. I could use a static presentation, I could use a slideshow, but then you would just have to trust me. And what I've learned in this space is that trust is hard earned. So let's rather just give you information and you can then trust yourself with that information. So we're going to start today's call on something called CoinMarketCap. And CoinMarketCap is a big platform. It gathers information from all over the world specific to cryptocurrency, and it dumps it in one place. But I want us to start here because we're going to start with probably 2 of the most successful cryptocurrencies in the world and the blockchains, the technology that support these. I'm sure you've all heard of Bitcoin. Just type BTC if you've seen headlines, if you've seen news publications, if you've seen Instagram influencers talking about Bitcoin. This is a coin that's been around since 2009. It started at a couple of cents and now sits at over $100,000 in value. Then type in ETH if you've ever heard anyone ever talk about Ethereum. Ethereum is the 2nd largest by market cap cryptocurrency in the world. It launched in 2015, 2016, so it's newer compared to Bitcoin. And it too started at a couple of cents and then over time has grown in value to over $4,500. Now, for anyone who's on the call, you're probably wondering, how do these things grow in value? What is the hype behind them? Or more importantly, what is the utility? What do people use these for that the value of them have grown so aggressively over time? And the best way for me to explain this is probably to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Firstly, I do want to say that not everybody has loved or understood cryptocurrencies. So if you've typed a 0 in the comment section, you're right up there with some of the most famous people in the world. For a long time, Jamie Dimon, that is Mr. JP Morgan, thought Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies were Ponzi schemes, were things that you shouldn't touch. He warned the public against them because his understanding of it wasn't so great. We can now see that JP Morgan is a large proponent of Bitcoin because the education, the trust, the validation is now there. So yes, even some of the biggest minds started at zero, and that puts you in good space. We saw the same thing with the CEO of PayPal, the founding CEO, Bill Harris, back in 2000. And when was this? 2018. Again, 7 years ago, still. Bitcoin was being villainized, the technology was being misunderstood, or was being misrepresented. Lots of people had zeros if you ask them this question. And today, PayPal is one of the largest adopters of cryptocurrency. So understand you're in good space if you typed in zero. What we need to do, though, is understand how we got here. How does a cryptocurrency exist? And why are people using them? Why are people adopting them? Why is it being used as reserves? Why have they grown so aggressively in value? And I would encourage you all to go have a look at the history of money. I'm going to give you the very, very short version of the history of money. And we're actually going to use the whiteboard behind me to quickly run through the timeline. So money in the form that we understand it, which is coins to begin with, like crypto coins, cryptocurrencies. The first ones we saw were in 700 BC. A nation called Lydia started creating the first gold coins and distributing it into its empire and then trading with other empires using that gold coin, that currency. And so over time, people started using a coin or a gold ingot or a gold something in order to exchange value. And we saw gold become the de facto money of the world for the next 3,000 years, 2,500, 3,000 years. How do we know? Well, the next major empires that came about were Greek, also gold-based currencies. We then saw the Roman Empire, gold-based currencies. The Roman Empire extended its empire using road technologies. They took over more gold mining, excavation sites in Portugal, in Europe, specifically North Africa, extended their empire aggressively. We saw that empire eventually break down. The Byzantine Empire, also gold-based currencies. We saw the Ottoman Empire, gold-based currencies. And fast forwarded all the way to the 14 and 1500s, where we saw the Portuguese and the Spanish empires sail across to South America and unlock another massive reserve of gold that had been localized to that region. And so we saw the gold again as the backing of money, the formal money, the gold world currency money flow into Europe. And we saw huge amounts of growth between 14, 15, 1600 into the European region. This takes us all the way, interestingly enough, into the first time where gold really started being questioned as money. And so we've got to go into 1939, and we've got to go into a period in the Europe region specifically of massive conflict. So let's quickly shoot across to 1939 and then into 1941. We see that Nazi Germany flows into its neighbors and it starts seizing their gold reserves. Now, again, gold is the global currency at this point. It's been money for now almost 1,000, 2,000 years. And so Nazi Germany starts seizing gold. Europe panics and starts sending its gold away from Europe. In fact, Canada and USA received large amounts of gold from its European counterparts, like France, like the UK, like Spain even, just shipping large amounts of gold out. Now, it's tricky to know exactly how much gold arrived, but we do know that by 1941, Fort Knox, the main facility for holding gold in the US, was now sitting at 20,000 metric tons. Now, just to let that drop for a moment, just to let that number land, if you go and do research on Nazi Germany's seizure of gold, it was suggested it was the largest robbery in history of gold. And when you go into it, you see that the numbers float anywhere from 91 tons at its lowest estimation, up to 600 tons. Okay, that was the largest seizure of gold according to history. Interestingly enough, the US, through the same period, ended up accumulating 20,000 metric tons of gold. Now, I want you to understand what's going on here. That means that a large chunk of the world's global currency ended up in one place. This is the money system that's been working for 2,000 years, ended up in one particular place. And so what we saw over the years was those European countries, as they started settling into peace and building, they started going and asking for their gold back. So France would send its ships across, Britain would send its ships across, they'd say, hey, we need some of our gold back. And then something pivotal happened. On August 15th, 1971, Nixon suddenly suspended the ability for people to cash in what was owed back to them. I want you to understand this. 40% of the US gold holdings were represented by Britain and France. So 40% of 20,000 tons were just owned by those two countries. Can you imagine the rest of Europe? So whilst Nazi Germany was accused of the largest theft ever in the numbers of 600 tons, we're looking in the thousands of tons here. And an interesting moment in history where Nixon decides to declare to the world, actually, we're not giving this gold away anymore. You can't arrive with your IOUs, you can't arrive with dollars, you can't arrive anymore with paperwork and exchange it for the gold we have. We're not giving it out anymore. And that was 1971. And since 1971, things have really gone very skew, I think, from what the plan was. So let's understand this briefly. I want to put a little exclamation mark in here. Right up until 1971, so from 700 BC to 1971, the world had successfully operated as a monetary system built on gold. Okay, gold is scarce in supply. It's hard to get out the ground. Once you've got it, you've got to store it somewhere. It's not very liquid. In other words, it's hard to move around. But the world had agreed that based on its scarcity, this was a good form of money. And it worked. It worked for 2,500 years. In 1971, a decision was made to change and no longer have gold. And in fact, we went into a period of something called fiat money. Now, really clever economics professors will stand there and talk about the values of fiat money. They'll tell you how it's far more responsible, that the value of that money is pegged to the GDP of a country and its imports and its exports and its number of jobs that are created. Very clever people will say some very clever things. But thankfully, you and I, we can just look at math and say, if we remove all of that noise, there's something that is wrong with this 54-year-old system. I just want us to lock that in for a moment. The money system we're currently using is only 54 years old. And in 54 years, global debt now sits at 324 trillion. Which begs the question, is this fiat money system working? Here's another way to ask yourself that question, and you can put it in the Q&A box. Is it cheaper to buy a 2-bedroom home today than it was 10 years ago? Or is it more expensive to buy a 2-bedroom home today than it was 10 years ago? Let me know in the Q&A box what you think on that question. If you've never bought a home before or you're not sure on the numbers, let me ask you another question. Is it cheaper to put gas in your car in 2025 than it was in 2024? Another way to check the numbers, is it cheaper to buy bread and milk today? What are we in? September 2025 than it was to buy bread and milk in January 2025. You see, if these numbers are showing that things are growing in price. In other words, they're becoming more and more expensive. The other way to understand that is our buying power is decreasing. In other words, the value of fiat money is dropping. And I want us to understand this at a very simple level. This is a 54-year money system, 54 years old. This is a 3,000-year-old system. You've got scarcity driving this system, and then you've got governments who flip the printing machines on and can just print as much money as needed in order to buy certain things or solve certain problems or loan against each other. And the issue here is we're now sitting 54 years later, $300 trillion in debt, and our buying power is decreasing. So how does Bitcoin fit into this? Well, in 2009, Bitcoin gets presented. In other words, a paper gets leaked out into the market with coding on, and it says, what if, it paints this picture, what if instead of a money supply based on scarcity, instead of a money supply that is limitless or unlimited, what if we created a money supply that was fixed? In other words, there is an exact number that'll ever exist. A fixed supply versus a scarce supply versus a limitless supply. That's where Bitcoin positioned itself. So let's have a look at what that means in simple terms. It means that Bitcoin, as a fixed supply system, hard cap of only 21 million Bitcoin ever to exist, means that as the demand for this increases, the value will. In the early days, if only 10 people wanted something, there wasn't a high demand. If 10,000 people wanted something, the demand increased. If 100,000 people want something, the demand has increased to 10x. If you have 10 million people wanting something, the demand on that something, that fixed supply, is very high. People will pay more for it. And so what Bitcoin came along and did is it said, let's create a fixed supply money system that grows in value based on the demand on it, based on how many people want to use it as money, based on how many people want to use it as a reserve, based on how many people want to use it to buy and sell goods. Now, I want to stop there and I want to just check in with you. 10 out of 10, 10 being, this makes sense, 1 being, I have no idea what this boy is saying. Rate where your understanding is at, because I really want to try and, whilst going through the history and the facts and the websites, just keep bringing it back to one-pagers, just one-pager summaries that are actually simple and make sense. So let's have a look at where we're sitting. We've got some 10s, we've got some 10s, we've got some 5s, we've got 10s. That's great. Listen, if you're typing any number lower than 10, welcome to the call. We're going to keep building on these ideas, and hopefully by the end of it, you will have a lot of clarity. So let's keep diving into the numbers. The second thing that Bitcoin gave, which the current money system doesn't give, is full transparency. In other words, an explorer is just an online, anyone can access it. An explorer allows us to see every single transaction that takes place inside of Bitcoin. In fact, it's constantly updating, showing us how much Bitcoin is being bought or sold or moved from wallet to wallet, from exchange to exchange. There's a number of these that exist. And so immediately what Bitcoin supplied that the current money system doesn't supply is the ability for anybody to see value moving from point A to point B. Now that might not sound like a big deal, but let me explain why this is powerful. Right now, banks, forex brokerages, financial houses have to pay what we call an auditing firm, a middleman, an auditing firm to arrive and check that their numbers are accurate. Then the auditing firm turns around and reports back to a regulator to say, this bank can be trusted because we've gone through all their books and we can see that the money's being allocated right. They're being very responsible with it. There's nothing that you need to worry about. Okay. Blockchain says, well, we don't need the middleman and we don't even need a regulator. Everything can be seen by anyone, anywhere in the world if you go online. So for the first time ever, this system gave full transparency. Can you imagine, I just want to say something maybe controversial here. Can you imagine if your country used Bitcoin to do all departmental expenses and purchases and services? Can you imagine if you went into the Department of Immigration and saw exactly what the spend was and how they were spending it? Imagine if you went into the Department of Water, the Department of Finance. Imagine if every person in the country could see exactly where the tax dollars were being spent because there's full transparency on the blockchain. We'd probably end up with, hopefully, very honest spending because you and I would see exactly where the spend was going. And this is what blockchain has done. It's completely shaken up the financial systems that currently exist. And when I say completely shaken up, the same financial houses or the same financial influencers or the same financial platforms that were villainizing Bitcoin are now the same ones that are buying it as a reserve. They're offering it to their clients as ETFs. They're allowing people to save into it. Because you can't stop what is so transparent. You and I can go and buy Bitcoin today from the exchange, put it in our own wallet. This is what blockchain starts doing. It fundamentally changes things. Now, what else has blockchain changed? And once we've gone through the things that it's changed, we're then going to sit as a community and we're going to identify how can I then take part in this wealth transfer and this infrastructure change. In other words, what do I need to do to take advantage of this big move, this big shift, both in finances and we're going to look now in the internet. So let's power on together. Again, this 30-minute section is a lot of information, but in the next 30-minute section, we're going to take it into actionables. So that's Bitcoin, $117,000 today because there's a high demand on a very fixed supply. Let's look at the next one, Ethereum. Ethereum is completely changing how the internet works. Now, in case you're not sure how the internet works, you can go and look at a brief history of the internet, but I'm going to give you the very summarized version. The internet started as a government instrument, a government tool, government infrastructure to send information. That's how the internet started back in the late 60s, early 70s. The internet then got adopted by other companies, and we saw a massive dot-com burst in the 90s and the 2000s. And when people talk about the internet, in fact, what you and I talk about as the internet, we talk about as Web 2. The way this works very simply is that there are central servers like Google, Facebook, YouTube. These are all central servers, and they allow people to connect into these servers to access their infrastructure. So when you and I are doing a Google search, we are using Google's centralized server system to access information. This is Web 2, very centralized. If you and I are using social media like Instagram or Facebook, or we're using, I think they call it Meta now, sorry, not Facebook. We're using Facebook's infrastructure, Facebook's centralized infrastructure in their control to move images, to send videos, to send messages, etc. If we are using our banking services at the moment, you are using what we call a centralized server system, where you are sending payments from one person to another, but essentially that bookkeeping, that take money from Bruce, send it to Dave, the bookkeeping happens through a centralized service. Now, Web 2, brilliant, amazing, But anytime you use a centralized service, you are being charged for using someone else's infrastructure. Now, in the example of banks, you're being charged banking fees. In the example of browsers, you're being charged data privacy. In other words, your data is being shared with third parties. And in the example of social media sites, you're also being charged data privacy, but that data is what we call data specific. In other words, it's being shared, certain data is being shared with specific companies, products, services based on your needs. How do I know this? Have you ever had a conversation with your phone around and you've spoken about dogs? Yeah, we're thinking about getting a dog, we're thinking about maybe taking the dog for walks in the park. The kids really want dogs. You've just had that conversation. And then Facebook and Instagram starts hitting you with advertisements, dog food, dog leashes, where to buy dogs, how to vaccinate your dogs. Just type yes if you've ever had an experience where you've had conversations and suddenly your social media is giving you a lot of information. Hey, we're thinking about doing a holiday to Bali. Bali looks amazing. We're not sure where to stay in Bali. We're thinking about going for a month in Bali. Suddenly, your social media is lighting up with retreats in Bali, yoga in Bali, the beaches of Bali. This is the cost of using someone else's infrastructure. And so this is Web 2. Now, Ethereum shifts that model completely. And it's important to understand that there is a cost for the internet. It's important to understand that there is maybe a problem with centralized systems, the main problem being data ownership and privacy. And yes, you can go and click on the button that says, don't track my activity. There are certain things inbuilt into Web 2 that allow people to track that. The other issue with centralized services is that they are prone to hacking. So when a bank gets hacked, it's because the data is all in one place. When Facebook gets hacked, it's because the data is in one place. Centralized system allows for huge amounts of data to suddenly be shared en masse if a hacker gets hold of it. The other particular problem with centralized systems is that they can have pressure from governments to share data of their users. And this didn't seem like a big deal until recently, in the last 2-3 years, when people started getting arrested for sharing their opinions, so freedom of speech, on social media. We've seen this in the UK, we've seen it in Australia, we've seen it in the US even. And so Web 2, whilst incredible and life-changing, has got its problems, the centralization problem. Web 3 just means that there's an entirely new infrastructure being built on blockchain. Now, you don't need to be a coder. You don't need to run out and suddenly learn how to code to take advantage of this, because coders are already doing this. People are already using things like Ethereum to build out community-based, community-run, decentralized systems. We've got things called social media dApps that run on Ethereum blockchain. We've got NFT marketplaces. This is where people can sell art, etc., on blockchain. And the really exciting thing is we've got what we call decentralized finance products and services running on blockchain. The ability for people to earn from their cryptocurrencies because of these decentralized ecosystems. So Ethereum completely changed how the internet is currently being used. And again, Ethereum arrives with transparency. So people can't cook the books, they can't change the numbers. We can see from the Ethereum Explorer transactions that are taking place, blocks that are being formed, contracts that are being written. There's full transparency taking place in Web 3. And that's why the Ethereum coin has grown in value, because more people are using this blockchain. They're using the Ethereum coin to drive all activity taking place on Web 3. So that might sound like that's not relevant to me, but it becomes very relevant when our operating systems are being changed. In other words, you and I in 5 years' time are not running on centralized iPhones and centralized banking and centralized social media, in the next 5 years, because of blockchain, our entire monetary system would have changed and how the internet would have changed. And you and I don't have to go out and make those changes. You and I don't have to go out and become coders and developers. You and I can simply position ourselves into certain blockchains or certain coins that are at the ground level of those changes. And we can set up a one-time setup, just like we did when we set up online banking or when we went and did our license to set up ourselves to be able to drive. We can go and set ourselves up once in certain platforms with certain systems to take advantage of this transfer of wealth from banks into crypto and the transfer of wealth again from Web 2 into Web 3. Does this make sense? Are you equipped with the why we should make this transfer? I'm not saying are you equipped with the how, but do you understand the why, the reason why we should be positioning ourselves? Because that should be the driver. If we don't position ourselves now, we lose out on the big upside of this transfer of wealth from web2.com to Web3 and the transfer of wealth from banking, traditional services into DeFi services. That's the first 30 minutes into the why, the education, the where we're at and why are we at this point in history. Okay, great. Lots of people saying, yes, I understand the why. So let's spend the next 30 minutes talking a little bit on the how and the what. So let's shoot across to share screen. Right. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how to identify what to move towards in order to take advantage of what we've just seen. In cryptocurrencies, there's this word called tokenomics, which is just a nerdy way of saying the economics or the rules that surround how a token or blockchain or coin works. We don't need to get stuck in that. We can use simple analogies to understand how they work. So let's have a look at how Bitcoin works. I want you to imagine that Bitcoin is building out its own superhighway called a blockchain. This highway is built block by block, very similarly to how the Romans expanded through Europe. The Romans set out and built these roads block by block by block, and once these blocks were set, you had the super highway that they could move troops, they could move supplies, they could move the gold, they could move trade, everything through these highways. Blockchain is very similar. Blockchain is creating a highway to allow the movement of value. But there are certain activities that take place for this highway to be laid block by block, this blockchain. The first is called mining. I want you to imagine that every time a block is laid, a group of blue-collar laborers have arrived, they're called miners, and they've gone and laid that block. And because they've laid that block, they've received a Bitcoin that is now shared amongst them. Let's pretend that there were 10 miners. That means 1 Bitcoin is shared amongst 10 people. And this is a little bit how Bitcoin began. It would lay a block and it would share it with anybody who had been involved in that activity. Over time, the number of miners started growing. People were saying, this is an interesting concept, building out a new monetary system block by block, building out a new road, a highway for distributing value block by block. And so suddenly the amount of Bitcoin was being split amongst more people. Over time, that grew as well. And so as the numbers started increasing, more and more people getting involved in the activity, the amount of Bitcoin that each person was receiving was less and less. Think about it mathematically. If 1 Bitcoin was split between 10 people, each person would get 0.1 Bitcoin. If 1 Bitcoin was split between 100 people, each person would get 0.01. If 1 Bitcoin was split between 1,000 people, each person would get 0.001. what this meant was that the amount of Bitcoin being split amongst these people meant that they would probably not sell it to the market at the same value that these people used to sell it. If it cost me, think about it like this. Let's say that I was mining gold and it cost me $1,000 to mine one piece of gold. That means 10 people had each spent $1,000. That's $10,000 to mine one piece of gold. Now, if you've got 1,000 people who've spent $10,000 to mine one piece of gold, but they're each only getting 0.01, they're going to have to sell that piece of gold at a much higher value in order to break even on their original cost. This is what we saw in Bitcoin. We saw miners creating the road, and as the mining community increased, the amount of Bitcoin they received decreased. And so they wanted to sell it at a higher value. Now, here's what happened on the other side. In the marketplace, the amount of people who wanted Bitcoin was increasing as well. So we started with maybe 100 people. They wanted to have Bitcoin as a reserve or as a currency. Over time, that built up to over 1 million people. And now we split in a space where it's close to about 300 million people hold some type of Bitcoin at the moment. What that means is your supply is fixed, being released. The amount of people helping release it has increased, meaning that they're getting a smaller portion. And on the flip side, the number of people who want some of this Bitcoin has radically increased. And so the value of Bitcoin has gone through the roof. This is called a fixed supply rule or a fixed supply tokenomic. There's a second rule that exists that says every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin being released to the miners is going to halve. So for a moment, imagine for a period 1 Bitcoin was being released. And after 4 years, for the same mining activity, only half a Bitcoin is being released to the miners. Well, now the miners are receiving a much smaller portion, which means they will sell it at a higher price to break even or make profit. And the amount of people who want it is increasing because of awareness out in the marketplace. So the price increases again. And we've seen this happen over 16 years, starting at 100 Bitcoin being released to the miners every block because they're helping build the road. Then it became 50 Bitcoin, then 25, then 12.5, every single block being released. This is called a tokenomic rule. Halving, that's one rule. Every 4 years, the amount halves. The second rule is that it's fixed supply. This is how Bitcoin is built. That is a rule for Bitcoin. Ethereum's rule is slightly different. Ethereum is also building out blocks by blocks. And Ethereum, in building the superhighway, also releases what we call Ethereum, not to miners. That used to be the case. It's now called validators. They've got a different name for it. But it releases it to people who are helping lay the blocks. The people laying the blocks are laying an infrastructure for a second group of people who are called developers. Developers are building businesses alongside this highway. So they're using the highway and they're putting dApps, businesses alongside of it to create value. They're building art museums with art inside of it. They're building exchanges where people can exchange value. They're building DeFi platforms where people can increase the cryptocurrency they have over time. So this highway that Ethereum is building is being used by one, first group of people to receive Ethereum, two, other groups of people to build dApps on, and then three, it's going out to the marketplace. So this is users who want to buy the Ethereum to get into these platforms. Ethereum slightly more complicated than Bitcoin. Rule number one, it's releasing Ethereum, set blocks, same rule. Rule number two, no fixed supply. No fixed supply. Meaning that more and more Ethereum are being released over time, which is why its price growth has been so slow compared to Bitcoin. Rule number three, anyone can build anything along the highway. And as long as they have a little bit of Ethereum to run their business, they're able to build whatever they want. So, what do we do with this information? Well, what we do is we find a project that has these same rules, what we call a blueprint of success. We look for projects that have the same rules that allow us to get into them now in the early days. So we're going to look for a project that's got fixed supply because that ticks the Bitcoin box. We want to tick the Bitcoin box. Two, it's got a halving mechanism built into it. In other words, the amount of coin being released halves. Okay, so we want a halving mechanism. And then three, we want the ability for people to build infrastructure alongside of it, because instead of it being minor markets, you're creating a third group of people who want the coin, the demand on the coin. You're creating a minor developer market equation. So we want something that is developer or DApp friendly. In other words, we're looking for a project that took Bitcoin as the dad, took Ethereum as the mum, and made a baby. Type in baby if you've got a kid, and you can see they've got some of me in it and they got some of mum in it. Or they've got some of me in it and they got some of dad in it. Okay, the best and the worst sometimes. What we're looking for is a project that takes the best of what we've seen that works already. We don't want to find a project that's experimenting. We don't want to find a project that is trying something new. We want to try and get a project that takes the blueprint of success of Bitcoin, the blueprint of success of Ethereum, and get into it now before the project becomes famous. That's what we want to focus on. Because for me to put $1,000 into Bitcoin, for that 1,000 to double, I need Bitcoin's value to go from 114,000 to 228,000. If I put $1,000 into Ethereum, for me to double that $1,000, I need Ethereum to go from $4,000 in value to $8,000. I would rather look for a project that has all of these in it that is still valued at under $2. Because if I put $1,000 into a project that's under $2, it only has to go to $4 in value. In other words, there's scope for growth. That's what I'm looking for. So in this section, we're looking at that coin. The coin that we're specifically looking at is a coin called Apertum, and you can go do your research on Apertum for yourself. Apertum has a high profile score of 92%. Okay, it's currently valued at $1.32. It's a top 500 coin. That puts it in the 0.01% of all cryptocurrencies in existence. It's got a fixed supply of 2.1 billion. Bitcoin had a fixed supply of 21 million. Apertum's got a fixed supply of 2.1 billion. And it is developer friendly. In other words, there are already 300 projects that are built on Apertum. You can go do your own research on it. Here's the exciting bit. The Explorer is up, which means if you're a tech geek and you love looking at data, you love looking at contracts, you love looking at details, you can go and look at the Apertum Explorer, just like you can look at the Bitcoin Explorer, the Ethereum Explorer, the Apertum Explorer. We're going to look at, in this section, in this 30-minute section, how do we get hold of Apertum in an automatic, accelerated, accumulated manner. In other words, how do we not have to become coders? We don't have to become developers. We don't have to become traders. We don't have to become tech gurus. But how do we get hold of a less than $2 coin that ticks all the blueprint successes we've seen, and it's only 6 months old. How do we get that coin? It's only got 60,000 users. How do we get that coin before it goes to 100,000 users? Because what do we know? If we increase how many people want it, so if we increase the demand from 60,000 users to 100,000 users, if we increase how many projects want it, and we know that it's a fixed supply coming out to the miners, then we know its value will grow. That's all we're looking for. We're identifying coins that we know their value will grow over time. So we're going to have a look at how we can get a pertum and we can leverage the value based on what we know to work already. So there are 3 ways in any cryptocurrency project that you want to accumulate, accelerate that accumulation, and in best case, automate that so that you don't have to sit looking at a screen or pressing buttons or anything. So we call this the 3 A's strategy. We want to look at how do we accumulate cryptocurrency that is of a low value, that we know has the right tokenomics, the rules surrounding it. How do we accelerate that process? In other words, it's not a question of how do we grab hold of the cryptocurrency, but how do we increase how much we can grab? And how do we automate so that we don't have to sit and become the people building dApps? We don't have to become traders. We don't have to become miners. We don't have to learn coding. How do we do all of this with the lowest barrier to entry? This is the how. Now, before we dive into that, I do want to check the levels of ability that we currently have. So, quick pop quiz, and you're going to go into the Q&A and let me know. Okay, when I look at people engaging in cryptocurrency, I want to understand what level they're at and where they need to go. So, level 1, I would describe as someone who owns a bank account. Level 2 is someone who owns a bank account, and it's someone who knows how to buy crypto. So in other words, you know how to do a KYC with your bank. Here's my ID, here's my address. I now have a banking profile. The same thing is with a central exchange. Here's my ID, here's my address. Now I can use my bank's money to buy cryptos. That's a level 2 person. A level 3 person is someone who has a bank account. They are registered with a central exchange. So very similar to a bank, except in the world of crypto. It's the same thing though, basically. And they have a crypto card. In other words, they've registered with a platform that allows them to spend their cryptocurrencies using a bank card. Okay, not from the bank though, but from a crypto provider. This, you need a KYC to open a bank account. This, you need a KYC to open with a central exchange. This, you need a KYC to receive a card. If you don't know what KYC stands for, it means know your client. Any platform that you work with that asks for your ID or your proof of residence, that's a KYC process. Level 4. Level 4 is you own a bank account, you own a bank account. You also have a central exchange, which allows you to buy cryptocurrencies. But you've done something very, very important. You've set yourself up with your own crypto wallet. In level 1, level 2, and level 3, any money that you store, any crypto that you buy, and any crypto that you spend, in all of these scenarios, you're using someone else's infrastructure. You're using the bank's infrastructure to store your money. You're using the crypto exchange's infrastructure to buy or sell cryptos. You're using the Visa card infrastructure to spend it. In other words, this is still centralized. The first time that you are operating decentralized is when you set up your own crypto wallet. For the first time ever, you will be in control of what you own. You're not in control of your money at the bank. Here's how I know. Go and ask your bank right now if you can draw out all your money in cash. I'd go do that today or tomorrow, just as an experiment. See how much money they allow you to draw. Go do it for yourself. It'll be an interesting experiment. None of us own the money that we put in the bank. The bank owns it, and then they give us rules on how we can get it back. Okay. Same with central exchanges. They own the cryptocurrencies you've bought. They sit in their custody, and they've got certain policies in place that if certain things happen, they're allowed to take your crypto. And the same is true for card providers. For the first time ever, at level 4, if you own a wallet and you put your cryptocurrency there, you're in control of it. That's the first time you're in control of something. In every other circumstance, you're not. Okay, level 5, you own a bank account. You've registered with a central exchange. You own your own wallet. And this is the important bit. You are earning and accumulating cryptocurrency in a DeFi platform, and you own a card. This is what I would call level 5. Now, here's the journey I encourage you to go on. Go on the journey of ticking these boxes. Hey, today I'm going to move from level 1 to level 2. And here's the good news. If someone's invited you onto this call, it's because they've gone through this journey already. Back in 2015, my wife and I looked at the banking infrastructure, specifically in South Africa. We looked at some of the decisions the government was making. And I said to her, we're making a big mistake putting money in the bank. I'm from a farming background. We understand what it means to reap sugarcane, set some of that apart, some of that aside, and replant it again. You cut into 30-centimeter sticks, you lie it that way down, and then sugarcane grows out of the nodes. We understand that you reap and you sow in order to multiply. And we were looking at our bank account and going, we're not seeing the reaping, the sowing, and the multiplying. And worse yet, when some of the headlines are in the paper, I was saying, in fact, I don't even think we're in control of where our money is going. And so we went on a journey in 2015 of going from bank to central exchange, and then eventually to make sure that we could spend our cryptocurrencies. And then we wanted to make sure that we were securing our own cryptocurrencies in our own wallets. And then as the blockchain technology got really exciting, Web3 kicked in, we started putting our cryptocurrency to work. We're in a position at like level 5 where we're not operating inside of a banking system, we're operating inside of a wealth system that's built all around DeFi and cryptocurrency. And this is the system that you can step into if you take the time to just go, I'm going to be patient with myself, and I'm going to use a community that I'm going to work with to move. Level 1, level 2. That's your first goal. Okay, I feel comfortable at level 2. I understand. Level 2, level 3. Okay. This is actually very similar to banking. I get a bank, I get an account, I get a card. Okay, this all makes sense. This is like moving from a 2010 model Toyota Land Cruiser to a 2020 model. That's all you've done. Same car, same understanding, slightly different engine and technology. Okay, then you move to level 4. Okay, I've got my own wallet now. Okay, now I've got DeFi. I'm mining, I'm staking, I'm earning 40 to 50% per year from liquidity providing. Like, this is where you want to get to. But here's what I want to encourage you. It's not hard, it's just different. It wasn't hard to go from driving a fully manual vehicle, no technology, to where we sit today at 2025, where our cars are trying to brake for us, or stopping us from changing a lane, or little lights are popping up everywhere because of electronics. Technology should make something simpler. It's the same thinking, the same action. All we're doing is we're using technology to go from here to here. So in the Q&A box, let me know what level you're at the moment. Are you a level 1 person? This is how far you've got so far. in life? Are you a level 2 person so far? How far you've got? 3, 4, or 5? And better yet, I would take out my phone right now. I would message the person who invited me onto this call and say, hey, I'm at level 1. I really need help getting set up in level 2. My goal is level 5 though. I really want to get into, if Bruce is saying it's possible to earn 50% per year, as opposed to the 2, 3, 4% the bank gives me, how do I get to a space of going from level 1 to level 5? Can you guide me through that process? The reason why I'd encourage you to ask the person you're talking to is they're probably in your region. They're probably in the same country as you. They'll know which banks operate with which central exchanges, what the process is. They'll know which banks and central exchanges and cards are available. They will know the process because they've gone before you and done it. Okay, so let's look at DeFi. This is the part I get excited about. The last 30 minutes is how do we make money from our cryptocurrencies, and how can we make money from teaching people how to use cryptocurrencies. So you get 2 different offerings here. You can go, I'm just going to make my own from DeFi, or you're going to go, I'm going to make my own and I'm going to boost my income by showing others how to do the same. This 30 minutes is my favorite. So let's dive into it. Okay, DeFi. There are 3 major ways that cryptocurrencies can generate more money for you. There are 3 major ways to do our 3 A's. What are the 3 A's? Let me know in the Q&A. What does that stand for? Pop quiz. We're going to use DeFi to achieve our 3 A's. Accumulate, accelerate, and most importantly, automate our activities inside of blockchain. So there are 3 DeFi products and services that we can take advantage of. The first is mining. And mining, just like in Bitcoin and Ethereum, mining simply means you're getting the Apertum coin directly from the source, directly from the blockchain. You are the first receiver of Apertum, which means the market, the people who want it, can't get it until you turn around and sell it to them. So this is the first DeFi action. And I would encourage every person, you want to get into this quickly because you control the supply. You get it straight from the blockchain, like the Bitcoin miners did, like the Ethereum validators did. You receive Apertum first, and you can decide, I don't want to sell it today at $1.30. I'm going to hold this and I'm going to wait. I'm going to control the supply. And when the demand increases and the value increases, then I'm going to turn around and sell it to the market. This is a highly empowering position to be in. I'm going to show you how you can purchase mining for yourself, and then it runs on automatic for you. The second activity is what we call trading. In other words, once the miners have chosen to sell Apertum out into the marketplace, in the marketplace, people are buying and selling from each other. That's what we call a secondary market. So people buy and sell from each other. Some people want Apertum, some people are selling Apertum for cash flow reasons, and it moves backwards and forwards over there. Very, very fluid interactions. Trading is a great place where you can also make money based on the rise and fall of the value of something. So we're going to look at how to automate trading. We're going to have a look at how to automate mining. And then the third activity, and this is the one that I am most excited about, is what we call liquidity fees. Now, liquidity fees. For trading to take place, for people to buy and sell from each other, there needs to be a liquidity pool. In other words, the ability for there to be Apertum and maybe USDT sitting inside of this exchange so people can trade it and buy and sell. The people who provide that liquidity earn 0.3% on the transactions. Now, I'm going to show you some figures in a moment, but that number can get up to about 40 to 50% on the liquidity you provided per annum, which, by the way, is a lot less than what the banks make on your money. Let's quickly unpack liquidity in a really simple analogy. You go to the bank and you put $100 in the bank, or 100 euros, or 100 bahts, or whatever currency. You put 100 in there. The bank says, thanks, we will give you 2%, 3%, 4% per year on that. Maybe put the percentage in the Q&A box. What does your bank offer you when you save your money with them? You're saying, here's my money, I'm putting it with you, and you're now in control of it. They will offer you a percentage for doing that. It's 3, 4, 5, 6% per annum. The bank takes that same money, it's now called liquidity, and it uses it in order to make money. Now, banks legally are allowed to lend up to 9 times the value of the money they have. So your $100 gets lent to 9 people. You've got 100, you've got 100, you've got 100, you've got 100, you've got 100. 9 people, each receiving $100 magically from your 100. Because they've loaned money from the bank charged them a higher fee. 15, 17, 20% sometimes. Let's pretend for a moment it's 15%. 15% times 9 is what the bank receives. The bank turns around and pays you your 5%. How much percentage has the bank just made for providing liquidity to borrowers? How much money have you just made for providing liquidity to the bank? 15% times 9 is a lot higher than what we get in DeFi. Sure, but you and I can't own a bank. 40 to 50% is a lot higher than what we get when we lend money to the bank. So this DeFi has said, well, let's set up a system that allows people in cryptocurrencies to provide liquidity for trading, to earn from the trades that are taking place, and to actually be at the coal face of it, at the blockchain, in order to receive the apertum first. DeFi, mining, trading, and liquidity providing. Now, trading, markets move up and down. You can have negative markets every month. You could have positive markets every month. We don't know. The market goes up and down, up and down. And then mining, this is like your midterm play. You receiving the token. Maybe today you're receiving the token at $1.30 in value. But you can decide when to take it to the market. I'm only going to sell my apertum when the price gets to $10. These are the 3 activities we're going to look at. Okay. 10 out of 10. Do we understand? Mining, you receive straight from the blockchain. You're in control of supply. Trading is when you've already sold it to the market and now you're taking advantage of buying and selling. Liquidity is when you provide it to the people who are trading and you earn fees on the trades. Those are the 3 activities we're going to look at today. Right, so we're going to dive straight into a platform called DAO1. So we have a massive community that is set up called DAO1. DAO1 is built on top of the apertum blockchain. Okay, remember Web3? You can put a building on a blockchain and earn from activity. DAO1 has done that. It's positioned itself alongside the apertum blockchain, and it provides products and services from and to and in and out of that blockchain. Now, the products we're going to focus on mining bots. We're going to focus on mining bots. So we've got some over here. Luna, Nebula, Solar, and we're going to focus on trade bots. Firstly, mining bots. Mining bots are very, very simple. As the name suggests, it's a bot, it's a code, it runs on automatic. And what it allows people to do, allows people to purchase a bot that stands at the face of blockchain and helps put a block in. And then it goes down and puts another block in. And it does this for up to 94 million blocks. This is a very special miner. It was bought during a promotion period. Let me find one of the standard miners. Oops, I've stopped sharing. Let me find a standard miner. Let's go back. Your standard miner will mine for 31 million blocks. It'll stand at the blockchain. Let me see, 9. Here, this is a smaller one. It's a little miner. There's 5 different miners. You got little miners and you got big miners, which just means that they get a bigger portion of a pertum at the block. But a standard miner is going to mine for 31 million blocks. You own one of these miners. You never ever have to do anything. You don't have to go and code or anything. It just stands at the blockchain, helps put in a block and receives its portion. Then it stands at the blockchain, puts in another block, helps receive its portion. These miners are only available at certain sales periods. So I would encourage you, if you want to get into mining, register with DAO 1 and then stand by in case there's any promotions or anything that comes out that allows you to buy one of these miners. The miners control supply. It is the most important product to own, I would say, because you are accumulating a pertum directly from the blockchain. If we go look, this is just a little one, by the way. This is like a very low value miner. If we go look at, again, that high value miner that I have there, the Nebula, this cost me $2,500. It's only mined 2 million blocks so far. It's accumulated over 211 a pertum. So today's value, that's like almost $300. And it's going to just mine and mine and mine and mine and mine. And I will hold these a pertum and I will decide when I want to sell them. Will I sell them at $10 an a pertum? Will I sell them at $100 an a pertum? I'm in control of the supply coming from the blockchain. All done for me on automatic. I just come into DAO 1 and I monitor the activity here. The second product that I want to show you is the product that is currently available in the store. So the miners are not available. So watch for promotions, watch for anytime DAO 1 releases another batch for people to buy. There are trading bots that are available. So in other words, you can now take advantage of the pertum out on the market and you can trade those. I've got one of these flux bots, which means that all it's doing is it's buying and selling as the markets are trading. So very, very simple. I've actually got a static image here to show you, which is helpful. Here's what a trade bot does. Very, very simply. On automatic. Again, this is the beauty of blockchain and Web3. You can own products and services and run on automatic. All the trade bot does is it looks for dips in the market and it buys a pertum, and then it looks for spikes in the market and sells a pertum. That's it. No emotion, no hype, no headline, no one saying buy, buy, buy and getting people all fired up and buying at the wrong time. The bot executes this without hype or emotion. So let's go in. I own one of these. The market, the pertum price has been dropping the last 3 weeks. So guess what my bot has been doing? Look at this. My bot has been buying up a pertum. The bag's almost full. We're at 632 a pertum already just from this bot as the price has been dropping. Let me check where the price. Let me go to the DEX. Let's go into month here. Look here. So we've had a drop in the price of a pertum. No problem. When is the best time to buy something? It's when it's dropping in value. So my bot's been buying. It's sold over here. There was a spike. I'll show you there's a bit of profit, like $9 or $10 or whatever. Drop, drop, drop. Guess what it's going to do when the market swings? Like, think logically. When is the best time to buy something? When it's low in value. When is the best time to sell something? When it's high in value. So I've got a trading bot that is following this marketplace on automatic. I'm not sitting at my screen. I'm not learning about trading. I'm not trying to figure out by reading headlines and reading articles and watching YouTubers. All I've got is a bot that is very basic. It buys when it drops, it sells when it spikes. It buys when it drops, it sells when it spikes. And so it's looking for its next big climb, and it's doing that all on automatic for me. So there it is. I got about $10 so far. That's fine. I'll keep that. What I've been aggressively doing is buying up a pertum. So that's my bot. It's accumulating a pertum, waiting to sell it when it spikes. And then the third thing that is all set up is this over here. Pertum USDT. This is called a decentral exchange that we're on. And I can put a pertum in USDT. So instead of saving money in a bank, I put a Pertum in USDT here. I provide liquidity. And look at this, 49% per annum currently. I've seen this drop down to about 4% in the early days when we had a very small community, small trading volume, small number of transactions. I have seen it as high as 118%. That was because we went through a big growth curve. There was a lot of people who were coming in buying some of the products we were selling. And at the moment, even on a dropping, our Pertum's been dropping for the last 3 weeks in value. Okay. Look at this, 49% per annum. So I've got these 3 DeFi products. I've got a miner getting it from the source. I've got a trader looking for volatility, drops in markets, rises in markets. And I've got DeFi, I've got liquidity where I'm earning fees on the trades. So all the trading volume that took place in the last 24 hours, I earn a portion of that. That comes back to me, 49% per annum. Here's what I want to touch on. If you can go patiently, level 1, level 2, level 3, this is not scary, it's just new. When you're at level 5, when you set up to take advantage of mining, trading, and liquidity, you get a whole new worldview. My wife and I, we don't bank, we don't put our money into traditional anything. We earn on our cryptocurrency from the source by mining. We love volatility. We think it's great when something drops in value. That's the best time to buy it. We wait for it to go up, we sell it. So we get profits from that volatility that everybody else is scared of. And we save into the decentral exchange. We provide liquidity for that trading to take place because we earn ongoing fees. This is our simple structure, our simple product and service triangle that we use to accumulate as much Pertum as we can to accelerate that process. So we take what we earn, we put it back in, and we run it all on automatic. I'm not sitting at my screen, I'm not trading, I'm not mining, I'm not coding, I'm not developing, I'm not monitoring headlines or hype. I'm getting on with fathering my 3 kids. We're getting on with homeschooling. We're getting on with traveling. We've got them plugged into 7 different sporting types. So whether it's rugby, parkour, indoor hockey, there's 7 of those. I need to go back and look. We get to go do all of that because we've got a system. We've got a system that we use through DAO 1 to take on the best of DeFi, the best of Bitcoin and Ethereum, so that we can take our 3 A's without eating up any more of our time. Now, just as I start ending off here, the last 15 minutes, I want to show you the business model that we've built around this. So we've built an entire business model based on mining, trading, and liquidity providing. Let me show you how it works. For those of you who are wanting to earn an extra income, I'm going to take you through some numbers. I'm going to show you how you can earn or put in a strategy to go from $500 to $5,000 to over $30,000 over the next 30, 60, 90 days. Using this, using mining, trading, and liquidity providing as your bedrock. Okay, who here wants to know how to just earn some extra cash flow? I sat with a gentleman the other day. He's 37 and a half. He's a C-level executive. I ran him through these numbers. He said, sitting in South Africa, he's not earning 30,000 a month. He has no way to scale his business. $30,000, I'm talking about equivalent. He doesn't have a way to scale his income to those numbers. And I showed him this. I said, well, all we do is we mine, we trade, we provide liquidity, and then we train other people on how to do that. And we earn a commission from selling these products and services. Imagine if Bitcoin had had a commission model, a referral model. Imagine if Ethereum had. A Pertum does through DAO 1. So we're going to look at that together. So I'm going to show you a slide from the referral plan that's been set up, and then I'm going to run through the numbers behind me. So there is a referral plan in place. You can ask for the full document if you want. You can go through, exactly number for number, how do the numbers work, how are the commissions paid, etc. But for time, I'm going to just come back here And I'm going to tell you that there are 3 commissions based on the products and services inside of DAO 1. Now, again, buying a trading bot, that's a digital product, highly commissionable. Buying a mining bot, that is a digital product. It's highly commissionable. And so the commission plan that's in place for our referral program is lucrative for people who know how to present or invite people to look at what we're doing. I'm going to take these numbers. I'm going to show you how I build a business around this model. So here are some of the assumptions that I make. Assumption number 1, the most popular entry point for most people is $500. Now, we do have a $50 product. We've got a $50,000 product. But what I watch most people do is they move into mining or they move into trading specifically with up to $500 of product worth because they are testing the waters. So first assumption is most people that I talk to are going to come in and say, I've never done this before. Show me how to set it up. I want to put value to work. The second thing I do is I divide my working week into 4, or I divide my working month into 4 weeks. So here's the other thing I do. I invite people and present people with information. I do that in week 1. In week 2, I help people register and I help people buy products. In week 3, I repeat this process. I invite people and I present information to people. In week 4, I help them get registered and I help them buy their first product. So my time is short. I want to make sure that I'm doing activity that is cyclical, rhythmic, because it helps me get into a nice schedule with my family and my kids. The numbers, I like to talk to 5 to 10 people a week. So I'll create a post that says something like, if I had $500 and I wanted to make $5,000 a month, here's how I would do it. Step 1, I would look specifically at the crypto sector because it's growing in value, it's anti-deflationary, and it's tax efficient. Step 2, I'll work closely with a team in order to grow my product offering in different countries. Step 3, and I just create a short post and I say, if you'd like to learn more, DM me and I can show you what I do. So I'll try and create 2, 3 posts like that or start 2 or 3 intrigue pieces, but I'm looking to talk to 5 to 10 people. I'm looking to do the same thing in week 3. Of those 5 to 10 people, about half tend to take action. So if I'm talking to 10 people, 5 people will say, this makes sense. I'm at a level 1. I want to go to level 5. So I'm going to work with 5 people to take them to level 5. Of those 5 people, because we're taking them to level 5 to DeFi, we want to make sure they're mining, they're trading, they're LP providing. So they're going to buy a product. And that product is going to be either mining or trading to $500 worth. So that's 5 times 500. That's $2,500 in sales, 20% commissionable. That's $500 in my back pocket. That's not a lot. I'm going to show you some numbers in a moment. Of those 5 people, 2 usually say, hey, I love the product services. I'm excited about level 5 and being in the DeFi space. But talk to me more about that business model. Show me what you do. So normally of the 5, 2 people join me in going and marketing. So by week 3, it's me plus 2 people doing the same activity, which means I might be talking to 5 to 10 people and getting 5, but the 2 people I'm working with are doing the same thing. And so it's actually 5 plus for one person's 5 plus the other person's 5. So we're now making 15 sales of 2,500 each. 15 of those sales. 5 are mine, so I earn 20%. Those other 10 belong to people that I'm working with. I get a micro commission on that sale of 7%. And all I do is I rotate this schedule 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. In other words, I have growth spurts every 2 weeks. So my 30, 60, 90 is actually broken up into 6 growth spurts or growth cycles. Here's where it gets interesting. Again, all I'm doing is I'm helping people move from level 1 to level 5, and I'm helping them get into mining, trading, and liquidity providing. So week 1 to 2, presenting, inviting, helping them register and buy. I'm going to earn $500. Week 3 to 4, I'm working with 2 out of those 5 people to do the same. So I am now earning $850. I'm earning my 20%, but I'm also earning 7% on their sales as well. At weeks 5 to 6, I'm now earning $1,500 because they're also working with 2 people out of their 5, plus I'm making sales, they're making sales. So now we're getting this team commission that's coming through. In week 7 to 8, I'm now earning $3,350 on the product of digital sales. Remember that I can take what I'm earning and then I can put it to work. I can go provide more liquidity, earning 50% per annum. I can go and put some into trading to take advantage of the volatility. I can go and put some more into mining in order to receive a pertum at the source. I can use this to accelerate my accumulation of a pertum. Personal choice, it's up to every person. 9 to 10, we're now earning $10,000. It's a nice round number. And 11 to 12, weeks 11 to 12, 17,050 for that 2-week period. Collectively, that adds up to $33,250. It's not me doing more work, it's me doing the exact same amount of work. How do I take someone from level 1 to level 5? How do I take 5 people every 2 weeks from level 1 to level 5? How do I take 5 people from level 1 to level 5 every 2 weeks and mentor 2 other people to do the same? The commission from the products is what I can now put into, because it's mine, it's my commission. I can now use that to accomplish my 3 A's: accumulate, automate, accelerate. And how do I do that? Well, I do it through either mining. So I take what I earn and I can put some more back into mining. I can put some more back into trading. I can put some more back into providing liquidity. What I've created is a business in a box that sits outside of the traditional system. My own products are DeFi based. I teach other people to use those products. I'm now earning a DeFi based income, and I can use that DeFi based income to accelerate what I have in Web3. Here are the next steps as we wind up a 90-minute blockchain workshop that I would highly, highly encourage. Step 1, message the person who invited you and say, I'm at level X, I need help getting to level Y, and my goal is level Z. For you, it might be I'm at level 1, I need to go to level 2, my goal is level 5. It might be I'm at level 2, I need help going to level 3, my goal is level 5. Message the person. The second thing I would do, I would reach out to them and say, help me register with DAO 1. When I'm at level 5, I want to make sure that I can get the 3 DeFi in place. I want to make sure that I can mine, I can trade, I can provide liquidity. And then if you want to join our referral program, and we've got about 10 to 11% of the entire user base, so we've got like 60,000 users, we've got about 5 to 6,000 of them are our referral base. If you want to be part of the referral program, reach out and say to them, hey, can we have a conversation on how to put together a business in a box? Because I think these products and services would make a lot of sense to a lot of people right now. We spend 30 minutes looking at the why. Why blockchain right now? Why Bitcoin right now? Why Ethereum? Why a Pertum? Every person on the planet is facing that exact same why. The financial system is changing. The internet is changing. How can you help them take advantage of that? I want to thank you so much for your time. I hope you got value out of this. Message whoever invited you onto the call right now. Let them know, hey, what are the next steps? And take yourself on a journey. It's new. It's not impossible. It might feel scary, but I can tell you there's nothing to fear. So go out, take steps, learn. Change is coming, and you get to take advantage of that change. Thank you for your time. Have a fantastic day.